Your Honor, I understand that in court, facts, dates, and formal wording matter most, but if you allow me, I won't start with those. I will start with a feeling. Because that feeling is what brought me here. For a long time, I couldn't find the right word for it. It wasn't fear in the usual sense, not panic, not terror. It was more like constant pressure, as if someone was standing too close behind you, but you couldn't turn around. I lived with that feeling for months, and every day it became heavier. I am an ordinary person. I never been confrontational. I never looked for trouble. I work, I come home, I live quietly. My street is not the city center, but it's not a dangerous neighborhood either. People here are used to minding their own business, and I was the same. The first strange things began almost unnoticed. I was walking home late, as usual, passing by an old parking lot where the streetlight never worked properly, and I heard laughter. Not loud, not aggressive, just laughter. I didn't even realize at first that it was directed at me. I kept walking. I didn't turn around. The next day it happened again, and the day after that. Then came the words, not threats, hints, comments. They didn't shout them after me. They said them just loud enough for me to hear, but always in a way that could be dismissed as, you imagined it. I tried to ignore it. I walked faster. Sometimes I changed my route, but it was as if they sensed it. Every time they were there, at the same time, in the same place. There were 3 of them. Sometimes a 4th joined, but he stayed on the side. They didn't demand money. They didn't try to rob me. And that was what scared me the most, because their actions had no simple goal. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to see me speed up, tense up, pretend not to hear. Then came the things that can't be proven. A shove of the shoulder when we accidentally crossed paths, missing keys that I found 2 days later in a trash container near my building, a broken phone carefully placed at my door. Everything was done so no traces were left, so I would have nothing but my own word. I went to the police. They asked questions. I answered honestly, and with every answer my position became worse. I didn't know their names. I had no witnesses, no injuries, no recordings. I was politely told that without evidence of a crime, nothing could be done. I left with the feeling that I had been erased, not by them, by the system. Officially, my problem did not exist. From that moment on, everything changed. I began to wait. Every evening, I caught myself counting steps, listening to every sound, watching reflections in shop windows. I slept poorly. I made mistakes at work. My life slowly narrowed to one route and one question, tonight or not. And one day I realized that I was no longer afraid of them. I was afraid of myself, of who I was becoming if I kept staying silent. I began to observe, not out of revenge, not out of anger, out of necessity. I understood that if I didn't start understanding what was happening, it would end badly. I started noticing details: who always stepped forward first, who laughed the loudest, who stayed silent but watched more carefully. I learned where they spent their days. I learned their names, not through hacking or threats, through open sources, conversations, coincidences. I simply put the picture together. I recorded things, documented them, saved them, not because I wanted to harm anyone, but because I wanted proof that I existed. That evening looked like any other. The same street, the same streetlight, the same footsteps behind me. They stepped out of the shadows and started talking. And for the first time, I stopped. I didn't run. I didn't speed up. I simply turned around. I turned on the recording, the camera, and I said their names, full names, last names included. I will never forget their faces at that moment. The laughter vanished instantly. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They were confused, because at that moment the balance of power shifted, not because I became stronger, but because they stopped being invisible. I didn't touch them. I walked past them. The next day the recordings were with a lawyer, then with the parents of one of them, then with the police, no longer as a complaint, but as evidence.
They disappeared. From the street, from my route, from my life. And a month later, I was the one standing here. I was accused of psychological pressure, of surveillance, of crossing boundaries, and now I stand here answering questions about why I did what I did. I answer honestly. Yes, I observed. Yes, I gathered information. Yes, I used it. But I didn't touch anyone. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply refused to remain a convenient victim. And now, Your Honor, I want to ask one question, not to you personally, but to everyone listening. If a person endures pressure for years, is that considered normal? If they begin to defend themselves, does that become a crime? At what moment does a victim lose the right to a voice? And who decides when silence becomes an obligation? I am not asking for justification. I am asking you to hear not only the facts, but the silence between them. Because it is in that silence that I lived for too long.